Nia versus Kai. Who would win in a battle? This is definitely a tough one because their powers and abilities almost work like yin and yang. Nonetheless, today we are going to attempt to find a solid answer to the question of who wins in a battle to the death scenario out of Kai and Nia. Let's find out. So this video is going to be formatted in a fairly basic way. First, we'll be going over Kai's powers and abilities, then we'll do the same for Nia, and then right at the end we'll come up with our answer to this question depending on a fair amount of variables. Without further ado, let's begin. So then, up first for Kai. Well, he uses the elemental power of fire. Obviously, I think that's fairly obvious to literally anybody. Now, Kai, with this firepower, can basically create big streaks of fire, fireballs, basically any reasonable kind of thing that you could think of when it comes to firepower. Kai can do all of that. Of course, he can also use spinjitzu, and his main weapon of choice tends to be a katana sword. Now with this, we've seen Kai use his power in all kinds of different scenarios, and we've definitely seen over the years just how strong Kai truly is. He can, of course, create fire out of absolutely nowhere. He is very skilled with his sword in more hand-to-hand combat scenarios, and yeah, that is basically all for Kai mainly. So yeah, definitely not a ninja to underestimate. He is definitely one of the most powerful ninja on the team. Now for Nia, she of course uses water power, so kind of the opposite of fire there. Now possibly she can't really create water out of nowhere. Nia is a very strange one because there have been some scenes where Nia can basically create her water out of thin air, and some other times we've seen her use water from fire hydrants, and when there's no water around her or in the air, she basically cannot use her water power. A prime example of this would be in the Nether Realm. She couldn't use her water power because all of it was frozen ice, and of course ice is Zane's element, so she couldn't use it. But again, there are other scenes where she can just create it out of thin air. Now just because of that, I'd say Nia's power is probably the most strange and confusing power out of all of them, just because of that fact alone. It gets kind of confusing and contradicts itself from time to time. Now Nia is also very, very skilled with a sai kind of weapon. I'm not too sure on the specifics of that. You know, basically that long staff that's got 3 points at the end of it. I'm not good with weapon names at all, so you will just have to excuse me on that one. But yeah, that is her staff of choice, and let me just say, I personally think that she's probably the most skilled ninja when it comes to using swords and stuff like that, and weapons in general. I definitely think she is probably the strongest when it comes down to that, just judging from some of the fight scenes that we've seen her in before when it comes to her using her weapons. So far, we've basically gone over Kai's powers and all of his different abilities that we've seen him use in the past. We've gone over Nia's abilities and all of her powers and strength and stuff like that. But now let's get down to the proper main point of today's video. Who would win in a fight? Well, first of all, this does definitely depend on if Nia can create water out of thin air, as we've seen her use a few times. Now, mostly I do believe we've seen her only be able to use it when there's water around her, so in fire hydrants, rivers, stuff like that, or, you know, even just the rain, she can control that too. So I'm going to go with the fact that maybe Nia can only really create water when there's water in her surroundings. I know it definitely doesn't really make sense considering basically everyone else can use their elemental power at will, not even depending on when there's, you know, fire around, for example, or earth around them. So Nia's is definitely different in that regard, but just because of the fact that she has basically only been seen using water when she's got water in the atmosphere around her, I'm going to go with the fact that Nia can literally only use water when there's a fire hydrant around a river, stuff like that. When there's water around her, she can use her power, but when she's somewhere very hot, say she was in a volcano for example, she couldn't use her water. So we're going to be having them fight on that premise. Kai, on the other hand, of course, can just use fire at will whenever. He can just summon it there and then. He can use it absolutely whenever. Now we know that because of the Nether Realm, fire really didn't exist there, it was too cold, but Kai was definitely still seen using his fire there. So yeah, that definitely does kind of bring things into Kai's favour quite a bit, to be honest. Definitely say that Kai then is a lot stronger than Nia, but say they were having a hand-to-hand weapon fight, then Nia definitely takes the win there. She is very, very skilled, and I honestly just don't see Kai winning with his katana, to be honest. And yeah, that is basically what I've got to say on that. So, Nia can only use her water when there's water around her. Kai can use his fire at will. Now, this still does definitely mean that, you know, it's going to be a tough fight because water cancels out fire, vice versa. So it would just kind of be a fight that gets nowhere, and they probably get quite drained physically very quickly if they just constantly went at it with each other and cancelled out each other's attacks. That is definitely making this a lot harder to decide. It all just comes down to who's less tired towards the end of it, after they've just spent a lot of the fight cancelling out each other's attacks in that way. But when we break it down to its simplest form, honestly, I've got to say that Kai is going to be the winner in this fight, just for a number of reasons. Of course, he can create fire out of thin air. Nia can't do that necessarily. And Kai just overall does seem like the stronger opponent. Now, that isn't to say that Nia's weak, because I do strongly believe that Nia is easily one of the strongest members of the ninja team, but Kai just takes the victory in this battle to the death scenario, in my personal opinion, just because of the fact that his fire is more consistent, Nia's really isn't, and yeah, he's just got more things that he can use against Nia, and yeah, that is basically why I think Kai would end up being the winner in this fight scenario. And again, that isn't to say Nia's weak at all, because she definitely is not one to be underestimated in the slightest. But yeah, Kai ultimately is going to be the winner in this fight, in my opinion. So with this being said, we have concluded today's video, and we have also concluded this fight battle scenario. Let me know what you guys think about all of this down below in the comments, and if you have any suggestions for who you want to see fight next, please do feel free to drop your picks down below in the comments. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video, and if you did, please do feel free to drop a like on it. If you are new to the channel and are interested in seeing a lot of content very similar to this, then please also consider subscribing to the channel with that notification bell turned on. And with this all being said, I will see you all in my next video coming out very, very soon. Goodbye.